Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tokenize This. I'm your host this week, Andrew Gajunas, and today we are covering a topic that can get a little bit touchy given the rabid following that certain cryptocurrencies out there have today. So we're starting things out with a little bit of a trigger warning, but we're talking about some of the deep critical flaws that can be found in certain first generation cryptocurrencies today, or what we at Turbadium affectionately call FluffCoins. It's not to say that these are horrible products or horrible currencies. Look, compared to fiat, they are far superior, right? Fiat currencies, they have a number of pillars, artificial supports holding them up, like monopolistic legal tender laws and reserve currency status in the case of the US dollar. And cryptocurrencies enjoy none of that. If there were a level playing field, they would run fiat out of town. Absolutely. So they're a step in the right direction, but they still have some critical flaws that we feel that need to be addressed. So with that being said, let's get on to today's episode and today's panel discussion. But you've been warned, if you really get like touchy-feely about certain currencies, you're going to get mad.
Tell us about FluffCoins from your perspective. What do you see as a FluffCoin?
Yeah, so FluffCoins to me are first generation cryptocurrencies. So they're based on a fixed supply model. There's many reasons for that, and we can talk about that, but they're based on an artificially created fixed supply, and all the price or the store of value is based on basically predicated upon the demand for that particular coin. It's like an imaginary commodity that is just willed into an existence. So we call them a little, like, I call it fluff, right? They're backed by fluff, and some people aren't going to really like hearing that, but they're still superior to fiat, right? I mean, fiat it's backed by absolutely nothing, right? But these cryptocurrencies, they're fluff coins.
Do you consider Bitcoin a fluff coin? Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
first true decentralized cryptocurrency with a fixed supply. But wasn't Satoshi trying to solve a problem there, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at fiat currencies in our central banking model today. I mean, anybody can sit down at a central terminal and print up a couple trillion new dollars. And that was obviously part of the genesis of the Bitcoin protocol. But at the same time, I mean, although he was a really great cryptographer, that was the way he implemented it. Using a fixed supply was the only way that he designed immunity from some manipulation of the currency supply. And there are more elegant models. There are better ways to do it. I mean, a fixed supply, it increases volatility, first of all, because there's just one price pressure on the whole thing. It's demand. So it increases volatility. I mean, it's not based on any kind of intrinsic value outside the system. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's still a step in the right direction, but guys in Somaliland, for example, are going totally cashless. What are they using? They're using the US dollar, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the first iteration, I think. I mean, that was the first model of a truly decentralized currency, and there had to be a way to keep the amount stable, or so you couldn't print more money. So that's good. I think that's, like you said, a step in the right direction. But what's a better way to create a currency, you think?
Well, I mean, there's going to be incremental improvements, and we're part of that story. I mean, the Wright brothers, their first plane, it flew, right? It flew for whatever seconds, but it wasn't a Boeing 777 that can go, from London to Perth. So there are iterations. I mean, we're looking at it based on some kind of asset class outside the system.
So what Turbadium's model is, in order to control the supply, is only to bring into existence, so to speak, the cryptocurrency when you tokenize it first, correct? So once that asset is no longer in the system, those tokens are gone. So that removes that currency from the system, correct?
Right. It's the same thing like a distributed treasury and mint, that you have to bring something to the treasury to put on deposit in order to generate the currency that it's backed by it. And so if you deposit a bar of gold, you can print up 1 bar of gold's worth of currency. If you want that bar of gold back, well, you got to you got to take the currency out of circulation, right? So it's still immunity from the centralized manipulation of the monetary supply, but with an elastic supply component that, based on the price of the currency, can increase and shrink the monetary supply. it's another pressure to counteract the volatility and bring a little stability to it.
Yeah. And that's important. I think people want to see a more stable cryptocurrency, and I think tying that cryptocurrency to a hard asset is a good step in the right direction. And I'm glad Turbadium is working on solving this problem.
Yep. Scott, we lost you for a second.
No, I think he's coming back. There he is.
All right, cool.
What are your thoughts, Scott, on FluffCoins?
Fiat, FluffCoin, they're synonymous in my view. It's something that has no value. It has no true intrinsic value at the end of the day, except the value of the belief of the buyer of that coin. It's hard to say if it's going to stand the test of time as gold does as a real store of value. But really what we believe a fluff coin is just that. It's something that doesn't have a backing. And our coins, our Turbadium tokenization process and the ability to turn into a Turbadium cryptocurrency, it's backed by something. It's always going to be backed by something. It's going to be backed by the full faith of that value of that real estate. So yeah, so FluffCoin is just that. I believe it's going to, most of the cryptocurrency out there, I certainly believe 98% plus will be zero before too long because they have no value.
Yeah, I mean, it's still superior to fiat, right? So it's kind of displacing it. I mean, fiat has a number of support mechanisms that are artificially continuing to prop it up. You know, you got your legal tender laws here in the United States. Everybody has to accept U.S. dollars. You know, the U.S. dollar has reserve currency status of the world, so that, you know, keeps demand for it. But those are kind of like the holders, right? The reserve currency status is basically like just having a large population of holders. But if Bitcoin, I think like if Bitcoin or some of these fluff coins had the same legal tender law supporting them, you wouldn't see the U.S. dollar around for long. I mean, people would migrate over because there is a superior feature set. So there's still a step in the right direction.
When trying to control the monetary supply by, you know, coding in a fixed number of Bitcoins or cryptocurrencies that can never be mined, I think that's, you know, I think that was important to the model. In other words, so you wouldn't have a inflationary situation where you can continue to print more tokens into existence. I think it's good to cap the supply, but I think Turbadium's model is a lot better because it's even more decentralized. Cryptocurrency can only come into existence when you tie it to a hard asset, and that brings in the more stability. So you can never inflate it, but it's also tied to a hard asset. I think it really brings in another layer to control the inflationary mechanisms. So I think
you make a good point. I think what's going to have to happen is people are going to have to just divorce the two concepts of fixed supply with the immunity from central manipulation. There are other mechanisms to enforce that, to have a distributed governance model where, you know, in the case of our currency, you know, if there's 1 million in circulation, and you have one turba, well, that's one vote. So it's a democratic kind of system of governance, and then using reputation systems to kind of improve the score or help, you know, a meritocracy-based voting system if you design the currency to do so. So
I think that's a good point. I mean, all these additional layers to really democratize the whole currency supply and make it available to everybody, and everybody has a say. I think that's what technology has been able to do this. I mean, listen, this would have happened, you know, a century ago if we had the technology we did. I mean, that's what we wanted. We wanted a decentralized system of government, and I think you know, this blockchain technology really gives everybody a true say, a true vote, and you can confirm a consensus around any sort of issue that's you know, that's being discussed. So I think I think all of this technology has so many benefits.
Oh, we lost Scott. So while we wait for him to come back, I mean, stablecoins, Wes, what are your thoughts
on stablecoins? I see stablecoins as one that are asset backed. Obviously, the supply is fixed, like you said, so it's it provides more of the stability and hedge against the volatility like you would normally see with a coin that's more fiat based. But like I said, going back to Turbadium, the model that these coins come into existence when they're essentially, you know, backed by some sort of asset.
Yeah, so like Tether, for example, I mean, they're buying up Bitcoin and printing up Tether, and you know, you get the MakerDAO and some other guys that are trying to engineer a product that tells the market what it's worth. I mean, have you ever seen that work in the history of man?
Oh, no, I have not.
Oh, there's Scott.
Yeah, he's back.
We had a little technical glitch there, so I'm going to try to answer your question there, Scott, on the difference, you know, so between FluffCoins and stablecoins. So technical glitch aside, you know, so FluffCoins still are those first generation cryptocurrencies that have a fixed scarcity model that led to the increased volatility. So it led to this opening where people are like, okay, people aren't adopting a lot of these cryptocurrencies because they're really volatile. So let's create these stable coins. Stable coins are kind of like an attempt at a next iteration of those cryptocurrencies, where they design an instrument that tells the market what it's worth, or that's the way most of them are trying to do it. They're trying to design some artificial instrument that tells the market what it's worth, or does automatic liquidation calls and margin calls, all kinds of crazy things to try to, you know, stabilize the value. So that's like to me the primary difference of like a fluff coin and a stable coin. There are other you know, attempts as well where they're trying to back it with, you know, things like fiat. Like the Monetary Authority of Singapore is creating one that's backed by the Singapore dollar, right?
Yeah, and that's I mean, listen. Go ahead.
Oh, it just amazes me. It's like fluff coin backing fluff coin. Let's create another one.
But what they're doing is, they're attempting to create stability by tying it to some sort of currency or asset. But here's the thing. I mean, Turbadium's trying to tie it to real estate, and that gives it, and that was my point to begin with. I mean, if you're going to tie it to an asset, the question is, does the asset exist, and who has custody of that asset?
Right.
And how can you prove it? I mean, how can you prove, unless you have complete transparency into a bank account or a vault to see, in fact, that gold exists or that asset exists? At least real estate, you can tell that exists. I mean, you know, we have all sorts of ways to validate that a real estate exists. You can look at all the evidence, the appraisal. You can look at you know, pictures from Google Maps or what have you. I mean, you can drive out there as an address, so you can see the survey. There's all sorts of ways to validate and prove real estate, and I think that's a good asset, hard asset that you can tie a cryptocurrency to.
Yeah, I mean, there's public record. There's ways of substantiating the tokenization as
Absolutely.
part of the public record. I mean, I hate to see all these little attempts at stablecoins where they've got black boxes that are non-transparent, they're obscure. They say, well, just trust us that we have all this, you know.
Exactly.
We don't allow auditors, but trust us is there, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a lot like taking old school, old world topics or processes and trying to just like force them onto the blockchain. I mean, blockchain is an enabler of new ways of doing things too. I mean, you don't have to sit there and try to like, hey, one of the guys they were trying to recreate the central banking model on decentralized blockchain. It's like, well, just because it was successful in the past because of monopolistic, you know, political powers and stuff doesn't mean that that's the way we should be doing it on this new platform, right?
Yeah. Well, it's still all about trust us. Trust us. We have.
Right. Yeah, it's being able to create that central bank coin that now has a backing of something. Backing of math is what people want to believe and say. And yeah, okay. I mean, I guess you could say that, but
like, how many maths does it take to go buy a latte at Starbucks? Like, can I go do like a calculator and do some math and like take the result over to Starbucks to get a latte versus like, you know, I could take a piece of my house if it was liquid, you know, and transform it into a liquid vehicle and actually take it there and trade it for something.
Yeah, and that makes more sense. I mean, I think people should be able to realize the liquidity in their real estate if they wanted to, without having to go, shoot, I need to go and refinance my house in order to do that. I mean, I think what Turbadium is proposing is a means for them to do that, a means for them to tokenize it and then realize the liquidity through the cryptocurrency. And like you said, this is something that they can do from their own house. I mean, I envision it as them having a cell phone with an app on there and saying, I'm going to use my property as an ATM machine today, and going to and punching it in and getting that cryptocurrency that they can exchange at, like you said, a Starbucks. I think that would be an amazing proposition, and I think Turbadium's on the right track.
Yeah, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, they can take their Rolex into a pawn store and get cash and get liquidity out of that, right? I mean,
that's it. You're creating, you're exchanging value for value, something that has real value to that buyer. You're exchanging that for something else that has value to both counterparties, the buyers and the sellers, and that's exactly what's happening. Versus today, I have to exchange my fiat because the belief is that the shop, the merchant, the owner is going to get something of value for that. The difference is if I take that same dollar that I'm going to buy at Starbucks today, hold that for the next 10 years, that dollar is not going to buy that cup of coffee anymore at Starbucks. Yeah. It's going to hardly buy a fourth of that cup of coffee, maybe, or half. Right? So it's it's a huge waste of, a huge loss of value, over time. And that's the difference. I think that's the big negative on the fluff coins, stable, non-stable coins. The value is not a store. Once again, it's a faith and the belief of something. Today, a belief in math, certainly a better belief than just the full faith and credit of a indebted nation. However, over time, I fully believe that an asset-backed currency is going to be the way to go.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I think that I think by creating a more stable currency, that you didn't have to convert it to fiat. I think more merchants would accept goods and services for these cryptocurrencies if they could be assured of the value of it and the fungibility of it. They wouldn't have to exchange it.
Oh yeah.
And you would have more merchants. You can make the decision of whether or not you want to, trade and exchange within our current system, or opt out, or favor an alternative like a blockchain-based cryptocurrency, a truly decentralized currency that's generated from their asset. And I think that they merchants should be able to have that option, and then I think people should be able to have that option too.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of going back to Gresham's law, even, where eventually, bad money will push good money out of circulation, as people prefer to hold on to the good money. And even though fiat is losing value, it's losing value at a semi-predictable rate, like at least in the case of the US dollar. People know that, okay, I got the dollar, inflation's going to be 5-7. I mean, it's not going to go down at least overnight, but that's what's stopping the adoption of things like Bitcoin is that, the Somaliland camel farmer that sells a camel for $75 and is going to feed his family for the next month. He's not going to put that in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so volatile, it can lose half its value in a day, right? I mean,
right.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's and I think the asset backed, especially on things like real estate, I mean, you're providing a service to both ends of the equation. I mean, you the asset owners themselves, they have the stability, they have the asset, they want liquidity, right? They want to get liquidity out of it. The guys that have all the cash and the fiat, they want stability because they're holding on to something that might get devalued, or they want to just have something predictable, or maybe even somewhat appreciating. So you're just connecting the two together in a way that just wasn't possible before. So you're servicing both ends of the equation, and they're all going to fight each other for an equilibrium, right? If it's an at-will system where anybody can go in and deposit more tokens to generate new supply, right? If they think that the turbo or the currency is overvalued, they're going to be depositing it to come in for that premium. So you got thousands or hundreds of thousands or eventually millions of people all competing for their own best interests and trying to find that equilibrium where the price should be.
No, I completely, and this is an interesting concept too, because I mean, you can use Turba as a store of value, but you can also use it as a medium of exchange if you so chose to do it, because it's not going to be as volatile. It may go up in value, and it may not be substantial, but it may go up in value. But nevertheless, you can use it as that, and you can realize the gain. But you can also use it to buy your coffee, and that's, I think, how it should be treated. It should be treated that way.
Yeah. Anybody, I mean,
But
all other things being equal, if you had a choice between, like the Athenians had, between a brass coin that said 5 drachma and a silver coin that said 5 drachma, you're going to spend the brass one just to get it out of your hands because you know the silver one is going to maintain its value longer. So
yeah, exactly.
Right.
you might use actually the bad currency in supported transactions for a while until it's completely out of circulation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just reading a lot of these FluffCoins, stablecoins. Obviously, they're based on Ethereum. They it could be a change in how Ethereum is belief. It could be potentially called a security. The SEC and the FinCEN are about to do some regulations, possibly tomorrow, possibly later this week or later this month. Wes, Andrew, what are your thoughts on regards to what is going to happen with Ethereum?
You know what? To be honest with you, I think the SEC and CFTC, I think they have I don't think they're going to come out with a ruling. I think what they're going to do is discuss it it's going to be whether or not any one of them are going to be bringing some sort of enforcement action against Ethereum for the potentially sale of securities, and it most likely might be the SEC. But then, like I said before, I've said it before in blog postings on in LinkedIn. I don't think that you can really classify one or the other because we're dealing with programmable assets, and they can be one thing at one time and they can be something different at another. I mean, Peter Van Valkenburg, he makes very good points. It may have been at one time a security, but then this current cryptocurrency is morphed into more of a utility because what it does it provides the gas to fuel the Ethereum virtual machine and the smart contracts that work on this virtual machine. So it has utility now, and it's not owned by anybody. There's no concentration of this currency with the Ethereum Foundation. It's dispersed. It's mined. It's you have validators validating. These nodes are running this program that validate these transactions. They have a stake in it. They receive. Have they moved to proof of stake yet, or are they still mining it by way of a proof of work?
But they've been having difficulties moving over completely to proof of stake, so they're going by a little hybrid system, and it's progressing over there. But
my point is this: they're mining. So it's the wealth is dispersed amongst the participants in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and in those cases, like even a utility system, the quote unquote fluff coin. I mean, it actually makes a little more sense even there because it's providing a service. It's like airline miles or some kind of a closed financial system where you're using the currency in order to power
a reward system.
Yeah. So I think those are fine. Because if the service doesn't compete and doesn't continue providing value, then those value will go to zero, and people understand that it's not being billed as like this great monetary instrument that's going to take over the world forever. So, but what does that do though to the value of a lot of these quote unquote stable coins or other cryptos that have been built on this system if it becomes a security?
Yeah, and then that's the thing too. I mean, first off, I'm not, I don't think any of us are. First off, I'm not providing any legal advice, so I'm not telling you that it's going to be one way or the SEC is going to do one thing or the other. And I'm also not, a financial planner. I can't advise you as to any sort of investment. But I think listen, if a ruling comes out like that, I think you're going to see the price of Ether drop substantially. But I don't think that they're going to rule that way. I mean, I think it's premature for them, the SEC, to go, hey, it's a security, but I see a lot of people gearing up for that to be the case, that Ether will be considered a security, and therefore all of these ERC20 tokens and these ICOs are securities. And I think it would bring a chilling effect, but I also think it would create a mechanism for companies that are banking on it. And I'm not mentioning anything like T0, but I think T0 is really pushing for a lot of these investment vehicles, these tokenized assets, to be securities. I think they want it to be because it's self-serving. I mean, they want that volume on their exchange. And they're the only, there's one of two other exchanges that are able to trade, that are essentially SEC approved exchanges.
Yeah.
So it's so it makes sense. But I think, like I said, but in the case of Turbadium, these aren't securities, at least not from my perspective. I mean, they're more they're a way to realize the liquidity in your property. That's not an investment vehicle. It's not something that's going to be listen, it's nothing. It has nothing to do with Turbadium's efforts that the coin is going to go up in value or not. At least that's my assessment. It's you're going to have a consensus that's based on the users of the currency, the owners of these currencies, and it's a little different than a security, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, well, and at the end of the day, like an external event like the SEC coming and giving a ruling. I mean, at the end of the day, if that unravels one of the first gen cryptocurrencies or FluffCoin, I mean, all you're left with is a digital fluff, right? As ownership, at least here, if you're properly tokenizing and you're creating an asset-backed currency, even if the whole system unravels, you still own the piece of property that those currency units represented, right? So
yes, you do.
That's it.
Something outside the system.
You have a backing.
No,
There's always something that has value in that system. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. I don't think you're going to see the SEC making a ruling. I think
Right.
we're gonna, and even if they do say it's a security, well then everybody goes okay, and at least we have some guidance. And then that's the thing. Then if you want it to be a security, you program it to be a security, and you market it as a security, and that's your intent. Then comply with SEC regulations.
Yeah.
But like I said, classifying it one way or the other is, I don't think the right move. I think there's exceptions, and I think that's what needs to be considered. And I hope that the SEC and CFTC continue to educate themselves on how this currency, this technology actually works.
Yeah, I agree, Wes, and I think that's where we're going. Is we want to be regulated. I think the industry as a whole wants to be regulated. We want to make sure that we have level and open and understood playing field that we can go on and create applications against. And so I think that's what's going to happen this week and this month and the rest of this year, is that we're simply going to have further guidance from the SEC, from FINREG, from other government agencies. But I don't think that's anything that's going to have a landmine or anything that's going to have a stop type effect. I think it's going to have a great effect on the evolution and the movement and the forward thinking of what we're attempting to do and what the other belief of what blockchain and cryptocurrency can do. And I think that's just, the evolution is continuing. I believe that's what we're going to see from the SEC and from other government regulations in regards to guidance.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that even fluff coins are far superior to the old fiat system that we're going to be moving off of, right? So it's all a step in the right direction. It's now just how do we help the community move forward and continue evolving into something better.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
With that, let's go out and continue to tokenize this and tokenize all assets around the world. We want to bring true asset-backed currencies to the world's marketplace.
All right,
guys.
So
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I like it.